The NBA Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Birddog Shorts. Dominate summer with an amazing pair of shorts and a free Yeti-style tumbler when you order over at birddogs.com/pool. That's birddogs.com/pool. Welcome, everyone, to the NBA Gambling Podcast, part of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is Friday, June the 23rd, currently 1:02 on the East Coast, here to recap what we saw in the NBA draft on Thursday evening. And joining me to help me break it down, I got my guy here with me, Delonte Smith. Delonte, how you doing, my man?
Yeah, man, doing good. I'm kind of glad that draft is over. A lot of long nights studying and doing all that stuff, man. I'm glad it's over. Glad we get to dissect some of these picks, and looking forward to breaking it down with you guys.
I'm not sure if you dissected some of the other talent you and I were talking about last night, but we'll discuss that later. Also joining us here, you guys know him as the voice of the Tennis Gambling Podcast, NFL, MLB, here on the NBA pod as well, and the WNBA, of course. It's Scott, Studio Reichel. Scott, how you feeling, my man?
Yeah, feeling pretty good. Overall, I feel like the draft was relatively uneventful compared to most years. I was expecting a lot more trades. We didn't really get that. We had one in the top 10, or a couple in the top 10 technically, because you also had the 10th pick getting traded to the Thunder. But for the most part, I thought it was pretty uneventful. To be honest, I really didn't watch much of the draft because A, why bother? And B, I was watching LSU Wake Forest in the College Baseball World Series, which was a lot of fun. 0-0 game in the 11th inning, and then you had a walk-off two-run homer, so that's what I was doing for a couple hours there. A lot of fun, but of course, you know, I was still following some of the draft stuff live. Then I went through all the picks afterwards anyway, so I'm ready to go for the podcast. But for the sake of watching the draft, I am curious, have you been glued year in, year out to watching picks, or do you just check back every now and then?
I usually tune in for maybe the top 10 or top 12 to 15 picks, and then if like my team, the Rockets, are picking, I'll tune back in. But I'm usually tuned in for about the top 10. I'll push it to top 15. After that, it kind of gets dried out. But I think last night,
and Twitter spoils it all anyway, a couple minutes before the picks are made anyway.
Yeah, so I turned off my notifications last night after at least the top 10 picks, and I was actually watching it on mute for some other reasons. But yeah, man, you're right. Last night it was kind of a little bit uneventful, especially after the top 10 picks. It kind of got a little dry. There are some shocking picks. We'll dig into that from at least from 11 to 19. But yeah, I'm with you there, man. It was kind of a dry draft last night. We were expecting, at least I was, some more significant trades to go down, at least for the draft. But maybe that transpires in free agency. We'll talk about that later down the road. But Lonte, same thoughts on the draft last night? Kind of dry after maybe the top 10.
I mean, I like the draft more than most people, so I pretty much was glued to it like the whole time. A little unnecessary like interviews with certain people. I thought it could have been faster, which I mean, you know, the interviews are what they are. But
you mean every parent of the kids that got interviewed?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of some of the parents, man, especially the moms. big fan of, and the sisters of Victor, like the sister of Victor Wembanyama. I'm a big fan of that. But yeah, outside of that, man, yeah, I'm actually glued to it. I usually watch it on mute, and I usually just try to tweet without like reading the timeline because you know a lot of Shams was ruining the draft. He's doing his best Woj impersonation. Woj said
4 minutes ahead, man.
Yeah, and Woj said he wasn't going to do it on a podcast. I think with Tim Bontemps and Brian Windhorst. He said he wasn't going to do it this year. He was going to be focusing on other things. But yeah, I mean, I tried to stay off of it. But I mean, I like looking at where some of these players are comparing to where I had them. So yeah, I'm more into it than most, but I mean, I can understand why you guys wouldn't want to, get into it like that. Of course, I watch it on mute, not into the Jay Billis, JJ Redick comparisons, but I am a big fan of Andrea and Malika, so big fan of those two women.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree about what you mentioned about like the interviews. It seemed a little bit excessive after like the first, like the top 5 picks. After that, it kind of dries out. Maybe top 10. Okay, you're a top 10 pick in the NBA draft. But after that, it just kind of got a little bit repetitive. But kind of looking at the top of the draft, it kind of played out the way, the rumors were swirling before the NBA draft started. Obviously, we know that Victor was going to go number 1. The big question mark did come for the Charlotte Hornets on what they did want to do, whether that was going to be Brandon Miller or that was going to be Scoot Henderson. At the end of the day, they did end up taking Brandon Miller. I think Mitch Kupchak comes out after the pick was made that, hey, Brandon Miller was our guy all along, but I don't think that way have been the case because unconfirmed reports were saying that, the building of or the front office, whether that was Jordan, the new ownership, the GM, were kind of split on who they wanted to take. And I think from what I read, again, this is all hearsay, that Jordan wanted Brandon Miller and the new ownership wanted Scoot Henderson. But I know Scott probably agrees with me as well that the pick at number 2 by far should have been Scoot Henderson for the Charlotte Hornets. But Scott, we can start with the Charlotte pick at number 2. They take Brandon Miller over Scoot Henderson. I personally, I tweeted this out. I think they made a huge mistake again.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I'm just disappointed. I believe on the pre-draft show that I was on, I said I expected the Hornets to take Miller because it was the wrong thing to do. And based on MJ's track record as an owner and what the team has done in the past, not exactly a great showing in the drafts in years past. Now, they hit on a couple of guys. You can say LaMelo's worked out, Bridges worked out before the off-the-court stuff, but Charlotte's had a history of underwhelming drafts, and it does seem like Miller was a guy who I was lower on than most people. I just thought that Miller was a guy who I viewed as being a relative ball stopper in college. I don't think he really made his teammates better. He also was brutal in the tournament when it came to shooting. And I do think that, once again, it doesn't automatically mean he's going to be a bust, but in big games, in the biggest of games, he kind of left his teammates out to dry the entire tournament, and that's why they lost to San Diego State, because he went like 5 for 19 in that game. But I do think when you're looking at Charlotte, I understand that it's a position of need. You want a small forward, power forward guy, and you could argue, well, we already have LaMelo, so why would we want Scoot Henderson? That's not the point. The point is Charlotte's a bad team year in, year out. I don't think this core is that good. And I'm not saying that you draft Scoot so you could potentially move on from LaMelo, but I'm also not saying that. I do think that, once again, when your team is consistently not good, you should be drafting on best available as opposed to positions of need. Because if your team's constantly missing the playoffs, then isn't every position a position of need? Because the guys you have at positions aren't good enough to carry you to a playoff spot. So I would have taken Scoot and probably traded Ball at some point down the road. But Ball's the future of the franchise, I guess. It's why they probably won't win anything. But I'm not surprised they made the choice, because I said they would do the same thing a week ago. I'm just disappointed for Charlotte fans. And I'm sure you saw a couple of watch party clips on Twitter, whether it was at random bars or whether it was at the actual Hornets arena with the Hornets mascot. They weren't very happy when Miller was selected over Scoot. The mascot might have gotten fired for collapsing on the floor when they made that pick. But I'm not a fan of it, but I'm not surprised, because it's what Charlotte does, and it's why the Hornets are usually in the basement.
Lance, I know I think you probably nailed the top 5 at least for the NBA draft, but you had Brandon Miller slated all along to the Charlotte Hornets. I guess no surprise to you there, huh?
Yeah, not really. I mean, I'm higher on Miller than a lot of people. I just think that he can, although they should have probably gone to Scoot and then moved him if they were going to do anything to just get a better package, because I think they could have got a better package trading that second pick to somebody. But, reports were out that Zion wasn't offered. And, of course, all this stuff comes out after the fact, not during all of the speculations. So, I mean, we know what to think of that. But I mean, Miller is so the basis of why people love Scoot is basically personality. I mean, Miller's got kind of like a job personality. Scoot is like a fun guy. He's got a big personality.
The cliche work ethic stuff.
Yeah. So, and I think he's a more likable person. He has more superstar potential. He's already been in like a movie and a documentary and all that stuff. And Brandon Miller's past is what it is. So, no matter how much they say, it's not going to come back to bite them or whatever, people are going to still have those questions. So I think, number one, that's what separates those two. Just speaking of, off the court potential period, I think that's what separates them and why people have this love for Scoot. And I love Scoot as well, man. I think he's a great player. But again, you run into the same situation that he's in Portland. I mean, they got an undersized backcourt. He's not the best shooter. He's 6'2", 6'3". I mean, Miller brings a different versatility, better defender. I just think that Miller probably fits better. And although I think Scoot will probably pan out to be the better player, I mean, you don't want to send a message to LaMelo like, okay, we got this guy, and now you got to fit in with him versus we're gonna draft to fit you. Because I mean, LaMelo is what he is, but again, I mean, I think he's been to the play-in like 2 out of 3 years that he's been playing, right?
Twice, and they lost by like 30.
They got blown out. They have like 140 or something.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but again, I mean, not a lot of younger players with that roster that he had probably could have done that. So I give him a little bit of credit for that. But as far as Miller, man, I like Miller. I think he can score really, really easily at the next level. A lot of stuff translates. I mean, the Paul George thing is like pretty clear. So I mean, you won't have to bring that up as far as his playing style.
But I think that he airballed the free throw in a workout.
Yeah, maybe that's what prompted him to draft him. But yeah, man, I'm higher on Miller. I honestly think he has a shot to be a good two-way player with his length, and he'll just have to be more locked in throughout the game, because he did have lapses at Bama where he was forcing things and he thought he had to take over. But again, at Alabama, it's threes or layups or dunks. It's nothing else. I think he'll be able to round out his game more in the NBA. And not to take anything away from Scoot, obviously, he's one of the better prospects in this draft for obvious reasons. I just think you just can't go into a season with the size differential in that backcourt and expect to contend.
Yeah, I just thought the main issue for me with Miller was his lack of maturity, which we saw in college, of course, for the off-the-court stuff he was linked to, but we'll see what happens. I know he's still talented. I'm not saying that he's a bust or anything, but still, I would have taken Scoot because I think that he is a more likely bet to succeed at the next level than Miller because of the maturity and the work ethic. That's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much how
you're gambling on prospects either way. I mean, everybody coming into the league now is 19 years old who played either in a foreign league, the G League, or 1 year of on and off performance in college. So you're gambling no matter what. That's why I kind of look more towards just work ethic and, I don't want to say personality, but a sense of maturity. It's why I really like the Thompson brothers. I really like just what I saw in the G League and how they conducted themselves, even with the interview stuff. I thought the divorce quotes were pretty funny about, I forgot who got the PlayStation 5, but I thought that it was pretty funny. I don't know. There's like a certain charm that I thought that they had. It seemed like they were very comfortable with the situation. I thought Miller was too comfortable. He's taking jabs at the guy who's making the second overall pick. He's saying Paul George is like the GOAT, and I'm like, what is happening right now?
Yeah, I listened to the clip, so he didn't really say like.
No, he used GOAT synonymously with favorite player,
right?
Which just isn't a thing.
Yeah, it's just the way that they phrased it was like, oh yeah, Paul George is better than. But when you actually watch the clip, you can see it's more clickbait than anything. But I get it.
Reminds me of the Key and Peele skit where you have Peele playing the basketball player, and he doesn't know the difference between figuratively and literally.
I remember that.
And he's like telling all the kids to literally go onto like the freeway and to like whatever, and then at the end. He's just like, I apparently confuse what those words mean. I think somebody needs to explain to Brandon Miller that GOAT is an acronym where each letter actually means something. So it can't be your favorite player. I feel like somebody needs to have that conversation with him.
That's a good point.
All right, guys. Before we continue the conversation here, let me tell everyone about Birddog shorts. It's summertime. Whether you're going to be taking those vacations or you're going to be poolside, you need to check out Birddogs. They have some great shorts, some great designs. And they also have the stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and the leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. Birddogs do the exact same thing as Lululemons, but fit way better. They fit way better than regular shorts. They're made of a stiff, restrictive cotton. Birddogs uses an anti-stink, sweat-wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. So what you got to do is go to birddogs.com/pool and enter promo code POOL for a free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. Again, that's birddogs.com/pool for a free Yeti-style tumbler. You won't want to take your Birddogs off. We promise you that. All right, guys, kind of going down the list here or down the draft order. I think the biggest surprise maybe came maybe at that 7th and 8th pick. I know the Pacers and the Wizards swapped picks there, but I think that
They made you money.
I know. Yeah, it made me money. I think that this would turn into a sweat for me. I thought this would be closer to where I would have gone to 10 or 11 for Bilal, but he ended up getting drafted at number 7, and then get traded over to the Pacers, if I'm not mistaken. And then Jarvis Walker gets picked at number 8. So, Lance, why don't you lead us off there, man? I know you had, I think you had what, Jarvis Walker going to the Pacers at number 7.
Yeah, I did. I had him over 6.5 draft position, and exact team was to the Pacers. And I have to look and see how they graded that or whatever, because he technically didn't get drafted by the Pacers. He got drafted by Washington and then traded. So I don't know how they're going to grade that. I mean, technically, I guess it's a loser because he didn't get drafted by them, but
the
I don't know.
NBA handles the trade stuff, by the way, dumber than any league I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, so I
doesn't make any sense.
I have to get I have to read the rules on that. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I thought the Pacers had one of the most, like, I think they had the worst draft probably out of all those guys. Number one, they should have traded a few more of those picks. They're bringing in let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, well, 4, and then the King guy is on a 2-way from whatever country he's in. I can't remember the country, but so they bring down 4 rookies, and I mean, to a team that's already young, and I mean, you already got your centerpiece who you're building around. So I like Walker. I think he can be a defensive anchor along with Miles Turner, and I think both of those guys have similar skill sets. So a lot of people questioning the pick as far as fit wise. Maybe they're going to move off of Turner. Who knows? But outside of that, man, I think Bilal, his stock really just jumped up. It's kind of scary he jumped up that far. But in Washington, I mean, he's going to have a chance to play right away and grow. He's a great defender, great length. Not a good shooter, but, you know, he's got Jordan Poole there for that, so you won't have to worry about that.
Well, he was the massive growth spurt guy, right? He gained like a foot.
He grew a foot.
Yeah,
grew a foot.
That's crazy.
And I think, you know, playing beside Wemby really, you know, boosted up his stock, especially, you know, that run that they had going to the French finals. But yeah, man, I think Bilal is gonna be one of those projects that, you know, takes him a year or two to get comfortable, and then we'll see a real growth from him. So I'm real high on him and his upside. Not so high on Indiana in the draft. Don't like a lot of the guys that I thought they reached for a couple of these guys. They're pretty much the same player in a few of them also. So arrow down on Indiana, arrow up on Bilal going to Washington. I think he's going to be a good addition for them, especially on the defensive end.
I think that at this juncture of the draft, then I think the biggest surprise really came at 11. I think we could say 10 and 11, where Dallas took Cason Wallace, and then at number 11, I think was probably the biggest shock of the draft, where Orlando takes Jett Howard at 11, where I think he was slated to more go towards like closer to after 15, maybe like in that 19 to 20 range.
Yeah,
but
I had him like 22.
Yeah, I mean, this seemed like a bit of a reach here. Scott, any thoughts on this pick by the Magic?
Yeah, I wasn't an overall fan of Orlando's draft. I feel like most people think they were the consensus loser of the draft. I think they're up there. I don't like Indiana's draft either, which Delonte touched upon. I thought they reached on a lot of guys. Just looking at the Pacers quickly, because we just talked about them. No offense to Walker, and I liked Walker at Houston, but if I'm taking a guy in the top 8, I want a guy that has some offensive talent. And I thought that Walker was more of a defensive guy. They already have Miles Turner. I kind of wanted somebody who isn't as raw offensively.
Who would you have drafted, Scott?
Truth is, Indiana is one of those other teams that you can pretend they're close to something, but they're not. Like, Halliburton's a nice starting piece. They still have a couple contracts they need to get rid of. I would have considered potentially taking Hendricks if I was Indiana. Maybe you could argue they could have kept Bilal if you think that he could blossom into something, but I just feel like Walker with Indiana is a fit. I don't know if I agree with Indiana likes to play extremely fast, and now you're bringing in Walker, who's roughly 250. And what's exactly his role? He's a power forward, small ball center. Is that basically his position?
Well, at Houston, he played more in a power role because they had those trio of guards that ran a lot of pick and rolls. But more so in high school, which a lot of people reverted back to because he had to fit into a specific role playing with Kelvin Sampson. He was more so of a playmaker. A lot of people believe in his shooting. He didn't obviously shoot a lot of jumpers in Houston's system, but they say in workouts he can shoot them. He's pretty confident. They're pretty confident in his jumper. I like Walker, but like you said, I mean, I don't know if I like it at 8. I probably would have traded that pick at 8. I think that was the dead zone with some of those guys going there. But yeah, I'm agreeing with you as well. I'll let you finish your point, but I agree with you with the Walker stance also.
Yeah, but just to finish up with the Pacers, they drafted Shepard, who was one of those late risers, but I watched a little bit of Belmont. I thought he was fine. I'm not sure if he was a first-round guy, but still, Indiana took him. They also have they're pretty clogged at that position as well, so I am curious how big of an impact Shepard can make immediately, or if he's just a stash guy that you bring in like a year or two after a year of development or so. And then they took Strother, who got traded to Denver anyway, so I guess that really didn't matter, but for the most part, just looking at the Pacers draft, I wasn't the biggest fan. The Magic, I thought, had an opportunity to actually do something pretty serious, and then I thought they were pretty underwhelming. Howard, I thought, was premature at 11, but I kind of want to go back and talk about Anthony Black at 6. Do we think that was a little bit too early or not? Because it felt like Orlando reached on guys that they thought had high potential, but the problem with high potential guys is that you're not sure how soon they can actually contribute. And it seemed like Orlando needed some shooting. Black wasn't a great three-point shooter. And you're looking at the rest of the roster. Do they have many knockdown three-point guys? Fultz was their point guard. He's not a great shooter either. He's gotten better, but he still doesn't attempt many of them. I just thought they needed more shooting, and I don't feel like they addressed it that much in the draft. And when they tried to, I thought they might have reached. Do you think Black should have gone 6th? Because I thought that was a little bit early. Yeah, Munaf, you're on mute. Yeah, so Delonte, you can go first if you want.
No, I'll let him finish his thought.
My fault. My fault. I think a lot of people did have him slated going right around 7 or 8, if I'm not mistaken, for Anthony Black. But yeah, you're right. I think a lot of these teams that, especially a team like Orlando, I think they were one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the entire NBA last season. They did need to address some shooting, but yeah, I mean, you're right. I wasn't a fan of what the picks that they did make. I didn't do my homework on Anthony Black. I think Lonte could probably expand more on that, but from the mock drafts that I respect and what I read, I think that he was slated to go around 6, 7, 8. Lonte, am I incorrect about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the range that he was going in. I had him pegged at 6 the whole time. I think a lot of other people had him pegged at 6. So I think
I might have just been lower on him, but I remember his issue in college was not being the greatest three-point shooter.
Yeah,
he went to an Orlando team that really needs three-point shooting, and he can't really shoot. So maybe it was just fit for me, but I kind of thought that they'd go in a different direction.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big Anthony Black fan. I'm not gonna lie to you. I think that what they'll do is they'll package up Cole Anthony, Markelle Fultz, Jalen Suggs, get rid of those, and give him the keys. He's a long, big physical guard. He can play both ways. He doesn't have to do a lot of scoring. He does need to improve his jumper. He's got Paulo Franz. They have Gary Harris, who actually was top 3 in three-point percentage. As long as he stays on the court, I think that's a good 2-guard for them. Yeah, I mean, I'm high on Anthony Black, so I think he'll be a great player. He didn't even play football until he didn't even play basketball until like the COVID year when they canceled football. He had like 3 or 4 D1 offers from a couple of Big 12 schools, so he's really kind of still raw and getting into the basketball thing. So I like him. The fit is not the best, I will admit that. But if you look at Orlando, I mean, they're all about their length and the size that they tried out. So I think he fits that mold perfectly. As far as Jett, I mean, yeah, that's a big reach for me. Like I said, I had him like 22nd, I think. I probably would have took Grady Dick there to get some of that shooting, like Scott said. And he still fits the mold as far as the length and being able to move off the ball. Not the best ball handler, but still, I mean, you don't need him to handle the ball when you got, Anthony Black, Paulo Franz, who can initiate offense as well. But yeah, I thought they reached with Jett. Although although last year around, I think last summer, before Jett's freshman year at Michigan, I saw him in a gym with a couple of NBA guys, and like he was dominating like NBA guys, like second tier, well, I'll say third tier NBA guys, and he was like technically still a high school senior. So the upside is there, but I just don't like the fit with all of those guys in that backcourt. So like I said, they got to be able to package those up and get, a nice wing, unless they believe in Isaac to come back and be healthy. But yeah, I mean, I thought the Magic missed out on Grady Dick or even like a Keontae Jordan. If you're gonna swing, I mean, swing at some of those bigger physical guards. I mean, even Whitmore was there. I know he had questions about his medicals, but it's about 4 or 5 guys that I would have took before Jett. And if you really wanted him, you could have traded back up into the 20s and got him, because I don't think anybody else was going to get him before that. But yeah, all in all, I love Anthony Black. I think he's going to fit them particularly well, although it doesn't look good on paper. Question mark about Jett, but I think he'll. He's going to provide some explosive scoring. He can shoot the ball. He's athletic. He doesn't pass, so he's a ball stopper. So he's got to improve there. Defensively, he's bad as well. So all for the Anthony Black pick. Question marks about Jett.
All right, guys, before we continue the conversation here, let me tell everyone about Underdog Fantasy. Best Ball Mania 4 is here, and Underdog Fantasy is giving away $15 million in prizes. Underdog Fantasy also has the Underdog Pick'em, which is also a great way to get down on your favorite MLB and college baseball player props. So many ways to win over on Underdog and active in so many states. Head over to UnderdogFantasy.com and use promo code SGPN for a 100% deposit bonus of up to $100. Again, that's UnderdogFantasy.com using promo code SGPN. All right, guys, one more play I wanted to touch on, and then I can open up the floor a little bit if you guys have any other final thoughts. But you mentioned the name Cam Whitmore. We talked about it yesterday as well on the pre-draft podcast, but he was really slated for. I know the Rockets were high, and I'm bringing him just because the Rockets picked him, but he was slated to be maybe a top 10, maybe even a top 5 pick. And I think the medicals is what really kind of scared off a lot of these teams. And maybe I also saw a interview this morning on ESPN discussing Cam Whitmore, that he was a little underwhelming in his workouts. Maybe the energy wasn't there for him, and the medicals where he was concerned as well. So he slides all the way down to number 20. Scott, any thoughts on Cam Whitmore? I as a Rockets fan at number 20, I'm not mad about it just because it is at number 20. Where before all this information that came out about Cam Whitmore, that the Rockets were considering taking him at number 4, but he falls all the way down the draft board at number 20. But any thoughts on Cam Whitmore here?
Overall, I feel like, once again, I was lower on him than most other people. People had him going top 5. I was never really on that boat. I never thought that he was a top 5 guy when I watched Villanova play. I thought he'd go top 10, and then reports came out about the injuries, and then you knew at some point one guy was going to slide, usually the guy with a questionable medical report, and that was Whitmore in this draft, and he slid to the 20s. So it wasn't a Will Levis slide, but it wasn't very good. But still, I think it's decent value at 20. Once again, for the NBA draft, especially nowadays where everyone's coming in at 19 years old, nobody really knows anything. You're kind of just drafting guys with upside, and you're hoping that you can kind of mold them into the player that you need, and hopefully they'll be able to pan out for you. So I don't mind it at 20, because Houston could have taken him at 4 in theory, and they got him at 20. So I like the overall spot there for Houston. Having said that, I have to assume his medical chart's a complete disaster. And that's why a lot of really good organizations passed on him when he kept sliding. I mean, you're looking at Houston going 20th. 19th was the Warriors. 18th was Miami. And neither team wanted him. I feel like that's pretty telling to me, because those are two of the better run organizations in the entire league. And a guy fell double-digit spots into their laps. And they said, you know what, we're good. So I feel like that's kind of a problem. If it was a couple of incompetent teams in front of Houston, and then Houston ended up taking him, I wouldn't be, that concerned by it. But still, the fact that two of the best run organizations had a chance to get this guy without having to trade up and decided to not take him tells me that his medicals are going to be a problem. So Houston gambled on it. They can afford to gamble. They have a very young team. Assuming James Harden doesn't go there, we'll see. But still, the point is they can afford to wait it out. But at first glance, I'm not shocked that he slid once the medical report issues came out. And with those teams passing on him, I'm a bit concerned as well.
Fonte, thoughts on Whitmore going all the way down to 20?
Yeah, man. I mean, I think it was the medical stuff, but I mean, I don't know for sure. But I'm hearing it was more so the interview process, and I could tell like he looked uncomfortable whenever they were asking him the draft questions, even the pre-draft stuff. He looked kind of uncomfortable, so I can kind of see how some, I guess, GMs or front offices would have been weary of that. But I always was. It's always a question mark of, do you really care what these guys like, how these guys answer questions?
I do also enjoy the idea that Miami and Golden State gave him like questions and they didn't like they didn't like the answers, and Houston gave him the same questions. They didn't like the answers either, but they've heard Kevin Porter Jr. and Jalen Green and said, you know what'll fit right in.
Right. Yeah. But as far as fit, man, if you like AAU basketball, man, they are going to be a fun team, like athletic, downhill. They still don't have any shooting.
Can they guard anybody?
No, hell no. They can't guard anybody. They can't guard us. Us three.
The totals are still overs for opponents against the Rockets. So.
Oh, yeah.
Us three, Sean and Kramer, man, we probably give them like 105, to be honest with you. Yeah. We probably give up 130, but still. But yeah, man, I personally would have took Omax. I think he's a better defensive prospect. He fits into what Ime would have done. I think he went a pick after Whitmore, but I understand the pick.
And then he got traded, didn't he?
With Omax, yeah, he got traded to Dallas. But
okay, so Whitmore went 20th, and Omax went 24th.
Okay, yeah. So I would have took Omax there. Yeah, I would have took Omax there. I think he's got more upside defensively. I think Ime would have loved him there. Doesn't need the ball to impact the game. I mean, like we just said, they don't have a defensive player on the team. I think he would have fit right in. Offensively, I mean, he didn't have to worry about offense. I mean, you got all those guys who are offensively driven. But I like Houston's draft. I mean, I like him in. I think he's going to be good for them. Allow Jalen Green to play more on the wing. We're going to be interesting to see who takes a lot of those shots. But all in all, I thought Omax was the better player. I understand it. Top 5, top 6 potential, and you get him at 20. I mean, that's just extreme value. Now, whether his medicals can hold up is another story. I don't know about that, but I mean, good fit. I mean, he's a downhill driver. He's going to get to the lane, athletic. I mean, if we were just basing it off athleticism alone, Houston, #1 power rated team and far, far ahead of everybody else. They need some more adults, Munaf. I mean, I think they need some more adults on the staff. A lot of kids in that locker room. Yeah. So I'm interested to see like if everybody stays. I know got a decision on Kenyon Martin Sr. I think Tari Easton's going to be a big imprint on that. Him and Şengün going to be a big imprint on that lineup. But as far as the rookies, like I like them in. Like I said, Cam. I mean, I just don't know about Cam. Some of the stuff that I was hearing about, you know, his injuries and back to high school. So yeah. I mean, question mark for me there, but I do like what Houston's done. I would have liked for them to get Omax though. So interested to see what they do as far as a veteran presence, because they do need, you know, a couple veteran presence in that locker room.
Yeah, I mean, there has been.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say Houston's got a lot of fun prospects. I'm not sure how many of them are going to be around in a year and a half. Yeah. But if you're looking at a team that's starting at basically ground zero, trying to build something up, I'm not sure if Jalen Green's the guy to lead them. Probably not. Maybe they'll get rid of him at some point. We'll see. Houston does have a lot of talent in the building, and there's a lot of prospects you might like. They're going to have to package a couple of them and trade some of them because, once again, they're going to need to get a star at some point if they want to get themselves out of the cellar. Yeah. But I'm sure Munaf can touch upon it. There's a lot of talent there. They're not going to be good at all, but I mean, in terms of overall roster this year or in terms of record, but there's some decent pieces in there that maybe could blossom into something.
I agree. And Munaf, before you go, I was going to say, like, I think that this year specifically, they're going to play 1,000 times harder because Ime is going to make them play 1,000 times harder. Now, they can't defend, but I think they're going to give maximum effort just because of Ime and his presence. So I do think that, like, I mean, you got those young guys, they're athletic. I mean, defense is about effort. It's not about talent. So if they just put together, you know, the mindset of wanting to defend, and if you defend, I mean, like I said, we all think they're one of the most athletic teams. You get out in transition and run, I mean, that's your offense right there. So I think they will play with max effort for Ime. Interested to see what you think, you know.
Yeah, I think last season we talked about this during the regular season that the young talent the Rockets had. Like, I didn't understand why they weren't playing with more pace, just because you have all these young guys, and when you have young legs, you should be playing faster in the NBA. And I think it also went back to coaching, that Steven Silas really didn't have an identity on this offense for the Houston Rockets, whether he wanted to run the offense through Jalen Green or that was going to be through Şengün. And now with him gone and you hired Ime Udoka, Udoka is going to get the best out of all these guys. But I think for the Rockets, there's 7 guys on this roster that are probably going to, or not be the foundation, but are going to be part of this future. And that's probably going to be Jalen Green, Şengün, Tari Eason, Jabari Smith, Thompson. I'm missing 2 guys there, but I think the guys that
Porter Jr.
in the.
You think they'll move Porter Jr.? Kevin Porter Jr. Think they'll move him?
So I think Kevin Porter Jr. is probably going to have to end up going on either coming off the bench in a 6-man role, or they're going to have to package him maybe at the trade deadline. But I think the 2 guys that are going to be out of that they can trade and teams that can use contenders can use maybe in a off the bench role is, like you mentioned, with KJ Martin and then Jayshawn Tate as well. Those are 2 guys that contending teams can use. So also the rumors have floated about, like you guys mentioned, bringing in veteran guys, some adults in the locker room. Guys like Brook Lopez have been mentioned. Dylan Brooks has been mentioned as well. I don't feel great about that, obviously, but
I thought he's going to China.
I'm hoping so that he doesn't end up with the Rockets, but
he's going to Phoenix, mid-level.
Hey, maybe. And then Fred VanVleet has been the other name that's kind of been circulating. And obviously, we've talked about James Harden as at volumes as well. But yeah, I think the next step for the Rockets is going to be figuring out, bringing in those veterans in the locker room and getting kind of rounding out this team. But yeah, we'll see. I just wanted to touch on Cam Whitmore because, like Scott mentioned, he was kind of the Will Levis-esque type of player in this NBA draft for this year. I want to kind of open up the floor here before we do get out of here. Anything else you guys want to mention that kind of caught your eye here? Scott, we'll start with you. Of the guys that we did talk about or we haven't talked about, anything else that kind of caught your eye either in the first round or the second round?
Yeah. Well, first things first, I thought ESPN's broadcast sucked. I want to get that out of the way. I was not a fan of the way they handled the broadcast. Whitmore's falling. Nobody's talking about it. They're interviewing. They're asking the same prospect every single question. They're turning to their parents. So what do you think this team's going to get? What do you think of your own kid? Oh, I think he's fantastic. Thanks for that interview. Really appreciated hearing it 30-something times. Really insightful information there. But for me, one thing I do want to talk about, which I thought was a pretty interesting team to follow throughout the draft, was actually the Dallas Mavericks. And I'm not saying that their moves were good or bad, but they had to try to do something. They got rid of the Bertans contract, and they traded down. Now, you can make an argument they should have taken Wallace anyway, because Wallace is a very good player, and maybe they could have used his versatility as a ball handler, etc. But Dallas saved some cap space, and they drafted Derek Lively. Now, Lively, I watched at Duke, very good rim protector, and they needed help with rim protection. The problem is he's extremely raw offensively, so raw that he barely scored at times for Duke in games. So I get that he's going to be potentially a lob threat with Luka, and I know that he's supposed to help out with rim protection because Dallas had none of that last year. It does feel like Lively, though, is going to need a year to grow potentially in terms of either just experience or in terms of potentially, weight. But I do think that when you're looking at Dallas, they were the most interesting team to me to follow because they've already made 3 separate all-in pushes. It's not going to work. I'm just telling you that right now. But it is kind of fun to see what desperate teams do when they need to triple down on a bad decision in order to try to make this work. They're probably going to bring Kyrie back. They still have Luka. They got to keep Luka happy or at least try to. But I thought Dallas was the interesting team to follow because OKC absorbed the Bertans contract because they have so much cap space. They got Wallace, so OKC, I'm a big fan of what they did in the draft in general. But Dallas was the team I was looking at because you knew they had to do something after they tanked the final game of the season to try to get into the lottery in the first place and to try to get into the top 10. And they ended up top 12, and they ended up getting a center. If you like Lively, then you probably like the move. I'm a bit skeptical on if he'll be able to have an impact immediately or not. It's a position of need, but I felt like it was a little bit early based on how raw he is. But I thought Dallas and what they did was fascinating. Is it going to work out long term? Probably not. But I do think, once again, it was interesting to observe from a distance what they were trying to do.
Yeah, I think that, again, you mentioned it with Dallas, how the season kind of transpired for them, especially at the end of the year, and how they're going to fill out the roster after or with Luka, possibly also getting Kyrie back. We'll see. We'll keep our eye on that situation.
Well, they have to at this point, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
but it's always coming down to, obviously, the perimeter defense. We know it's going to be absolutely terrible when you have Kyrie and Luka in the backcourt. But yeah, you're right. That was a team that you definitely wanted to keep an eye on, and there's always that at the beginning of the season that somebody out there is picking Luka to either win MVP or the Mavericks to be that quote unquote dark horse team, where I just don't think.
Did you hear the news? He lost like 15 pounds again during the off season. So how are they going to lose?
Well, I thought last year was the year that it was coming off of the Euro Cup, I guess.
Eurobasket.
Yeah, Eurobasketball, whatever it's called. That he came into this last season in the best shape because he was playing in that tournament. But
didn't he gain weight as the season went on?
I'm guessing so. So whatever he does in the off season, he wasn't able to do. So he just did it during the regular season. But again, I'm not high on this Mavericks team, man. Again, offensively, they're going to be great, but at the end of the day, you have to get stops, and that's not a team right now that's going to be able to get stops, especially when you have Luka and Kyrie in the backcourt. So. We'll see.
Up Bertans' contract, by the way, that has to be the first part of giving Kyrie a decent deal, right?
100%. Yeah, I agree.
Or getting Middleton.
Or that.
To be honest, I'm a little bit surprised Middleton opted out. That might be a separate conversation. I know that he might get paid, but I wouldn't want to pay Middleton based on injuries. But Dallas is once again a desperate team. We'll see. Getting rid of the Bertans contract was worth trading down 2 spots. I still like Wallace as a player, but maybe you saw something that I didn't, Delonte. Do you think Lively is a pro-ready guy? Because I saw a guy at Duke that can give you rim protection, a lot of foul trouble, and he's a no offensive talent whatsoever.
Well, if he's not, he's going to have to be, because he's going to be stepping in right away.
They got him solely for rim protection, but once again, he can't really do anything offensively.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he has to pick and roll stuff with. I kind of like what Dallas did with Lively and Omax. I'm not a big fan of Lively, but I think a lot of his downside in college had to do with the way it was fit. They were playing the prototypical too big with him and
Filipkowski.
Yeah, Filipkowski, which I like Filipkowski a lot better than
Isn't
him.
He like 7'6"?
Apparently he's like 8 feet now.
Yeah, he's like 7'6" now or something. They said he had a massive growth spurt or something. He's like he gained like 6 inches or whatever. But
yeah, man,
I'll believe it when I see it. But anyway, right. I do like Prosper. I like Omax, so I like that pick. But I don't mind the Lively pick if you think he can contribute immediately, because once again, Dallas is screwed. They're already committed to. They're already in too deep, and they have to try to make this work. So I understand they're trying to address a position of need. Their defense was awful, so they got themselves a rim protector. But either way, I don't mind what Dallas did, because they really didn't have many options left, because they've screwed up the first 9 steps. So they got to try to fix steps 10 and 11. But overall, I thought their draft was interesting. That's kind of why I brought it up.
Yeah, I like the draft. Honestly, I like that they're actually drafting for what they need and not just trying to throw haymakers, because at the end of the day, they needed rim protection. They needed perimeter defense. Omax can give you perimeter defense. He's more so of a more athletic Dorian Finney-Smith. If you watch some of his film, very athletic, not going to wow you with offense. Doesn't need the ball in his hands. Going to rebound at a high level, high motor. Lively. He's going to block shots. I think he's going to have to be the one who takes the biggest step, because he's going to be asked to do more than any other rookie, because he's in a role for a team who's actually, now whether they believe it or not, they think they can contend for a title. 2 of the better offensive threats, so he's going to be running a lot of pick and rolls. Shire did have him run a lot of pick and rolls while he was at Duke.
And he still couldn't score. That's kind of my problem.
Yeah, but I think more so at Duke, he was injury ridden, and like the fit just wasn't for him to score. Now, I mean, technically he doesn't have to score in this role. I mean, 10 to 11 points a game with 7 to 8 rebounds, a block and a half. I think that'll be like, I think Cuban and the organization will be fine with that. And Omax just being a disruptor, connector on the offensive end, I think that'll be a big part for them. I was, like I said, man, I was okay with what Dallas did. like I think they improved their roster, especially getting off the Bertans deal. Now, what they do with that money, and as far as Kyrie thing, that's another situation, another conversation. But as far as the draft picks, man, I like them. They were one of my winners for the draft.
There is one other team I want to talk about, but
Yeah.
I don't know if you had a team you wanted to talk about first, or if you wanted to finish up with the Mavericks.
I think that what you mentioned, and we kind of going back to the season. I think the past couple of seasons we've talked about it, that the Dallas Mavericks needed that front court presence or rim protector. They tried it, or some type of inside presence. They tried it with Christian Wood, didn't really work out this past season. Dwight Powell, I mean, he has flashes, but he's not the tallest or the longest guy as far as rim protection goes. And they had to kind of go out and make that move. And I think they addressed that. We'll see how he gets developed and how he gets coached up by Jason Kidd and that staff. But I didn't really have any other teams that kind of stuck out to me. Lonte, do you have any other players or teams that you wanted to mention?
Scott, you can go ahead with your other team. Maybe it's one that I want to talk about, and we could just knock it all at once.
Well, I'm not saying this team did well or not. I actually like the players they got, but we got to talk about it because I don't know what the direction of this team is. I got to talk about Portland. I feel like we have to talk about Portland.
Bottom three draft in the bottom three.
I think we got to talk about it because they were rumored to potentially trade Lillard. Then you heard rumors about Simons being offered for Mikal Bridges with the number 3 pick. And whether you like the Bridges or not, the point is there was rumors of an offer on the table. So Portland kept both guys. They took Scoot out of necessity because Scoot's available at 3. You're taking Scoot at 3. That's not even a discussion. I like Murray as a 3-point shooter that they got later on in the first round, but it's mostly just based on direction. Once again, I like the overall players that they got in the draft. I don't know enough about Rupert, who played in NZ Breakers. I don't really know much about him, but still. The point is, overall, I like the players they got, but I got no idea what the franchise is trying to do. So I don't know how to grade their draft because they've got the guys that I think can contribute. But the problem is they don't have any direction. Lillard's still there. Simons is still there. Now they add another guard with Scoot. I got to at least bring it up because I don't really know what Portland's trying to do. It feels like they're stalling when they should just blow it up already. But once again, I like the players that they got individually.
For Portland, I'll keep it simple. They need to make a decision on Damian Lillard. Like, hey, you're going to stick around for the rest of your career. I think Simons can, yeah. But I think for the Portland Trail, they need to make a decision on Damian Lillard. Like, Damian Lillard can't dictate what he wants to do. If you're going to have a direction for the future of your franchise, you need to make a decision on Dame. Have a meeting with Dame. Like, Dame, you want to be here? If you want to finish out the rest of your career, we'll see. We'll try to fill out the rest of the roster the best that we can. If not, we're going to move you at either beginning of the season or by the trade deadline. Because we keep on hearing all these reports that, hey, Dame doesn't want to be part of these youth movements and this, that, and the other. But I think that when you draft Scoot Henderson, that he's going to be the future face of your franchise, you need to move on for Dame. Stop letting Dame dictate what you want to do as a franchise, because as loyal as he's been to Portland and giving you those, playoff moments and those incredible shots, I think it's going to come to a point where there's a team like, Miami or the Lakers or the Sixers that can use a guy like Damian Lillard to probably put them over the top to contend or be a legitimate title threat going forward. So I think that for me, I'm sick and tired about hearing that about, hey, Portland, I'm going to decide on what I want to do if I want to be here and not deciding on what do we do in the draft or what we do in free agency, where the front office would be like, hey, thank you for your services, but I think it's time for us to part ways mutually, and we'll find you a destination where you want to go. I think that's where I'm kind of at with Portland. Lonte, any thoughts on that, or Damian Lillard and Portland going into the future?
Well, first of all, was that one of the teams you wanted to mention, or did I just go rogue there?
Portland. No, I mean,
you had a couple of teams. I wasn't sure if you were going to go.
Oh yeah, no, they're not even worth talking about. I mean, they're letting Dame hold them hostage, and it's going to cost them in the end. I mean, as constructed, they had like a F draft, even with Scoot. I mean, because like I said, you have Scoot Henderson. I mean, you have Scoot, Dame, Simons, and Ryan is a prospect. He's a defensive guy, long, athletic, not offensively driven. But again, you think he's going to play with those 3 guys in front of him? No, he's not. I mean, he's better defensively than probably all of those guys combined. But again, if you want to win, I mean, he's not going to be in the process now. And you got not Simons. You got Sharp there. I don't know what they're going to do with Grant Nurkic. I thought they should have took a big. Murray is fine. I think Murray's a fine player, but I think you hit it on the head, Scott. The direction, they don't have any direction of where they're going to go. Like with some of these teams, you can see, okay, this is how we're going to play this style. Like with Dallas, all right, they fit with their defensive things. With, I guess San Antonio will be a bad example because they got a generational guy. But just some teams have.
It's a team like that.
Right. They're athletic. We're going to get out and run. We're going to get out in space. Like they have a direction and an agenda. Portland, I think, was just drafting guys just for the hell of it. They don't know what they were going to do. I thought the same thing with Indiana. I thought they were just drafting just to draft, just whatever. We're just going to take swings at whoever. I mean, I'm just kind of sick of Dame. Like, okay, he's gonna wait around to see what they're gonna do with the rest of the roster. How
you
can
really
we
need to wait around? Like, how is
no? I mean,
Portland
that's
supposed
what the reports were saying. Like, I guess
But that's the problem with the reports. Lord knows they're not going to build a title contending team here. Like, what the hell are they supposed? They're going to suddenly become a contender because of one off season,
right? And how does he go from okay, I want to be here to I want to see what they're gonna do like in the off season to I don't want to be a rebuild team. So I think they're both confused and they each don't know what they want. So until they figure that out, they're going to be in purgatory for right now. Yeah, I hated Portland's draft.
I think hypothetically, if the Charlotte Hornets would have taken Scoot Henderson at number 2, I think Portland would have probably traded a number 3 pick for like a win now type of player, whether that was, and I'm just throwing names out there, like the Pelicans had taken up the number 3 pick, or we heard about the Paul George rumor as well.
Yeah, I would have took. I mean, I thought Brandon Miller would have fit them just as good.
Yeah,
him, Shaden Sharp on the wing.
I am curious. Would you have done the Mikal Bridges trade if the Nets said yes?
What for Portland?
Yeah, what was it, the third pick and Simon?
With Scoot on the board?
Yeah.
Yes. I'm doing it. Mikal Bridges, I'm doing that.
To be honest, for Portland, I would have done that too.
Yeah,
as
for Portland, I'm doing
it. I like Scoot, but still, I don't mind the Nets saying no to that. I'm a bit lower on Simons than most people because he literally can't stay healthy, ever.
Yeah, if I was Portland, I was doing it in a heartbeat. You got a proven commodity.
Just like 83 games last year. Like I have a problem with Simons because he can't stay healthy. That's kind of the main issue I have. But I mentioned Portland. I agree with Delonte. They don't have any direction. I don't mind the players they got, but still, I kind of want to know what teams Delonte wanted to talk about.
Man, I want to talk about your Nets. What do you think about the Nets? What do you think about the Nets draft?
Well, that's going to segue because we talked about the Bridges rumored trade. I'm fine with the Nets not taking it. I understand you want. I love Scoot as a player. I get it. The Nets don't own any of their picks until I don't even know when, 2040. So you can't voluntarily tank and rebuild when Houston owns all your picks anyway. So the Nets are stuck. The Nets have to try to win now without being good enough to win a title right now. And Bridges had moments last year where he looks like he can be an all-star. So I don't mind the move keeping Bridges. So we'll start there. As for their picks, I don't mind the first pick that they made when they took the player out of Alabama. They ended up taking Clowney, who gives them some size and some defense. Not a great shooter, though. I thought the Nets needed more shooting, but still, he can help with them on defense, and I do think he can give them some versatility with some lineups. I really don't like the Whitehead pick because he couldn't stay healthy in college, and I watched him at Duke. I thought he had moments, but for the most part, he underachieved at Duke, which is not a hot take. I think that's a pretty general consensus opinion. He was not very good at Duke, at least compared to his high school class rating. I think he was a top 2 prospect in his class, and he didn't actually pan out at all at Duke. I would have rather have taken Omax. I would have potentially have taken Smith Jr. out of Arkansas if you wanted to go through that route. Maybe even Murray if you wanted to take some shooting, but I thought the Nets draft was okay. It seemed like they just picked guys they thought could contribute somewhat immediately, and maybe the argument is, well, Whitehead can be a pretty solid ball handler, maybe a backup point guard if he stays healthy. I don't like drafting guys that are constantly injured in college, and Whitehead was constantly injured in college. I don't mind Clowney. He'll give him some toughness and some size. Bit raw, but I think he's pretty good in general. Needs to improve the shot, though. I was not the biggest fan of the Whitehead pick. But the Nets draft, I mean, there were teams that did worse. It wasn't that flashy, but I wouldn't have taken Whitehead there. I really wanted Omax, and they didn't take Omax.
Lante.
Yeah, I mean, I thought they should have taken a. I mean, Clowney was a great pick. I thought Clowney was a really good pick. I think he fits the size need.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't have to shoot as much at Bama. More so just a rim runner and a rim protector, which I think that's
my point is he the backup for Claxton? You trying to use both of them together? Because if you are, he's got to have to shoot a little bit.
Yeah, no, I think he'll back up Claxton and come in as an energy guy, because I mean Claxton's going to be in foul trouble or he's going to be hurt within the first 2 or 3 minutes of the game. Well, I like Claxton, but he's just got to be a little bit more consistent.
I like the Clowney pick overall. The
Whitehead
pick I was not a fan of.
Yeah, I love Clowney. But I didn't like Whitehead at all. I thought they should have took a point guard because don't have a natural point guard. I mean, Spencer's not a point guard. I thought they could have used a point guard at that position. I don't have it in front of me. I was going
to say, I mentioned Nick Smith Jr. from Arkansas. I'm not sure if he's officially a point guard. There really weren't many point guards available at this point in the draft, unless you wanted to reach on Sasser.
No, I would have took Kobe Jones.
Okay.
I would have took Kobe Jones Nick Smith more of a combo guard. But my thing is, if you were going to take Whitehead, who's more of a shooting guard, I mean, you're log jammed at shooting guard and small forward. So unless Cam is going to walk and you don't think you're going to bring him back, I don't think Whitehead fits at all. I'm lower on him than most, but I thought you could have took a Leonard Miller type of guy if you want to go with.
That's who I thought they were going to take.
Yeah, so if you wanted to go with wings, I would have went with Leonard Miller over Whitehead. I had Whitehead in the second round. You even could have went with
Pickett,
anybody, but like a point guard, anybody.
I said Pickett. Wasn't Pickett like one of the only point guards at that spot? It might have been a bit early, but still.
Yeah, I don't have it right in front of me. Okay. But yeah, I probably would have tried to at least take a point guard or try to find, a gem like Leonard Miller, who was a double-double on the team with Scoot Henderson. I think he was 16 and 11 in that league. I think Jalen Wilson will probably be an impact player day one on that roster.
That I liked. That pick I was a big fan of in the second round.
But again, if they keep Cam, they're kind of log jammed at that spot. So it's kind of up and down. But I love the Jalen Wilson pick. So 2 out of 3, I think that's a solid draft. I don't like Whitehead. I've never been a fan of Whitehead, even when he was in high school.
But that was one team you mentioned. I don't know if you wanted to bring him up because I'm here or because you want to talk about the.
No, that was one of the teams I had.
Do you have any other teams you want to talk about?
Yeah, quickly. I know we got to get out of here.
One thing, shout out to Utah. Big fan of their draft.
Yeah, that's one of the teams I had circled. Big fan of Utah's draft. Got a bunch of needs. I thought if we could have got a Keontae George exacta that would have paid whatever, I would have probably put a lot of money on it. I mean, all the reports were saying they loved him. I even put it in my mock draft. Like, I'd be surprised if they
the problem was him. Which pick they were going to use to take George.
Yeah, I figured they'd go Hendricks first because or whoever they were going to pick. I thought Hendricks or Bilal actually was a good draft pick there. I thought they'd go with them first, thinking that other teams would sniff that out and pick before them. Big fan of Utah. Big fan of Oklahoma City's draft. They got Keontae Johnson in the second round. I think he's going to be a real good player for them. Cason Wallace, big fan of him. Man, one of the more important drafts and good drafts that I thought, man, Golden State, great draft. Podziemski, they got Trace Jackson Davis to fill a big need at the rim. He's a better version. He's a better version of Kuminga. I think Kuminga will be traded.
I can't believe he fell down that much. I understand he's a bit undersized as a center, and you could argue there's no position for him. The guy's just a very good basketball player. Like, at some point, you can find ways to plug him into a lineup.
Yeah, I thought the Clippers were going to take him at 30.
And he was a pretty good rim protector for an undersized guy.
Yeah, he was. So I like Golden State's draft, man. Podziemski can shoot the cover off the ball. Like, he can really shoot it. And although Steve Kerr is not a big fan of rookies, we saw that. Podziemski fits a need. He can fit in with that system, run and gun. He's from right up the street. I mean, he went to Santa Clara. We saw what the last Santa Clara guard did in the NBA last year, and a different type of guard. But in that system, man, I think he's going to be a good fit for them. I like Trace. I think he fits a good void to come in, block some shots. He can run the floor, sets good screens. He ran an NBA offense with Mike Woodson at Indiana. So, some of the NBA terminology he's going to be familiar with. and understand it a lot better than some of those other guys. So big fan of that draft, man. Big fan of the draft. Didn't like Jordan Hawkins going to the Pelicans. Thought they should have took a guard. I think that's probably the worst place that he could have went to showcase the stuff.
It's the worst place they could have went, but I really like New Orleans' roster on paper because I'm a big Hawkins guy. I love their
who's he gonna play? Who's he gonna play in front of? I mean, you got.
I know it's a terrible spot for him. I'm just saying, I really like New Orleans' roster.
Yeah, I mean, they need a point guard. I thought Nick Smith was a great pick there, or Shafino. But I'm glad the Lakers. I thought the Lakers had a good draft too. I mean, I could go on for like an hour, so I'm not. But yeah, those are just a few of the teams that I like. Golden State, OKC, Utah, great drafts. I thought they had incredible drafts.
I'll give a shout out to the Lakers. I thought they did a nice job of doing nothing and having Hood fall into their laps at 17.
Day one starter. Get rid of D'Lo.
That's what I'm saying. I just thought it was a solid draft for them, not having to do anything. They just had a guy that landed in their lap.
And Max Lewis can shoot the cover off the ball too.
Yep.
All right, guys, that is going to do it for our draft recap for the 2023 NBA draft. We'll be back sometime early next week, maybe Monday or Tuesday. We'll get into the NBA Rookie of the Year market for the upcoming season. But Lante, anything else you want to mention before we get out of here, my man?
Nah, man. Glad we got to do this. Really enjoy the NBA draft, as everybody can tell. But yeah, looking forward to the summer league now. So we'll get to evaluate, see some of these guys playing, see some of the two-way. I thought a lot of guys that didn't get drafted that are on two-ways have an opportunity to make a couple of teams and to be effective in that role. Also, a big fan of Charlotte's draft. So also, Charlotte, I like some of the guys that they got.
If you ignore the Miller pick, I really like getting Bailey in the second round.
Bro, Bailey
I was a big Bailey guy.
Bailey and Smith.
Yeah.
So they probably gotta have to move off. Rozier, Hayward.
Well, Rozier's gone. I mean, they're gonna trade.
Rozier, I think will get traded.
Anyway. Yeah. So yeah, I like
Scott, anything else?
Not really. I'm happy you mentioned Charlotte at the last minute because I actually do like their draft besides taking Miller over Scoot, but still. Yeah, should be fun. Waiting for the Rookie of the Year stuff. Looking forward to the upcoming season. Summer League's going to be fun. I usually bet on some Summer League stuff. It's kind of funny how I go about actually betting on Summer League because I just look at the rosters and whichever players I think played winning basketball, I just back them on a team. And I've done pretty well for myself over the last couple of years. I have a pretty good gauge of determining which players are actually going to play well in a team setting and which ones won't. And that has actually worked out in the Summer League in the past. And I know that Delonte said he might be going to Vegas to watch some of the Summer League.
Yeah, I'm hoping so, man. I'm hoping so. Tickets are really cheap for like flights from here. But
tickets are free if you win enough in the casino.
that too. Yeah, I'm trying to get like in the building to like cover it. So I'm working on some stuff like that. So we'll see.
Point is, looking forward to it. Should be fun over the next couple months.
Underdogs kill in Summer League, so that's underdogs are really good, really good bets.
Do you think Cam Thomas is in Summer League this year?
If he is, give me his points over.
Co-Summer League MVP
every game.
MVP.
Hey, look, but right, I haven't seen the roster. I haven't seen the roster yet, Munaf. But my early pick to win Summer League, Houston. Early pick to win it.
Isn't Sacramento always really good in the Summer League?
Didn't they win? Who won last year? Was it Sacramento?
Did Sacramento win? I think they did because he can play really well.
Yeah. All right, guys. Like I said, we'll be back next week. We'll talk about Rookie of the Year. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the NBA Gambling Podcast YouTube channel and follow us on Twitter at SGPN NBA. And make sure to follow Lante on Twitter at XXLanteXX. Follow Scott on Twitter at Reichel Radio, and you can follow me on Twitter at SportsNerd824. Till then, good luck with your bets. Let's break these books off and let it ride.